Hello and welcome to the Cage Show. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. If you're a Republican, then be brave and step into the cage. If you're a Democrat, then be brave and step into the cage. If religious, be brave and step right here and up, inside and into the cage. If secular or atheist, then I say step right up and right into the cage. Step into the cage and be brave. Welcome all to the Cage Show. Hello and welcome to the Cage Show. Let's just get straight to the point here, folks. And that is, number one, do Second Amendment rights advocates here in the U.S. secretly drool over and or even admire from a distance the Taliban or other armed insurgents groups that rise up around the world, wherever that may be, and drive away what they perceive to be tyrannical governments, either foreign or domestic? But I must say this, folks, before I continue. This is not CNN or NPR or MSNBC or any of the other mainstream media types. So if you're tuned in because you're expecting a hit job or a hit piece on the quote-unquote right, you're mistaken. For what the Cage Show is fair, or tries to be as much as any flawed human can. That being said, I'm referring to optics and not philosophy or ideology. Let me repeat that. What I'm referring to here is optics and not philosophy and or ideology. It is the optics I do believe gun lovers around the world secretly admire about the Taliban and or other armed insurgencies that rise up and drive off what they, maybe not me or you, but what they perceive to be tyrannical rulership. And the one common thread these groups either have with one another or wish they did is armament, and plenty of it. That's the one common thread all these successful uprisings have with one another, is a seemingly endless supply of armament, whether supplied by a shadow government or, as in the case of the United States, sold and supplied domestically. That's the one thing these groups all have in common, is they realize the power of the gun, and plenty of ammunition. For what would the Taliban be without their weapons? Peasants and goat herders. You have to realize the power of optics, folks, to understand what it is I'm trying to convey here. You have millions of Second Amendment types right here in the USA who, yes, do see the Taliban as their enemy, but at the same time eerily foresee a time in their own nation where they too might have to rise up one day in arms to drive away or dismantle by force a domestic tyrannical government that no longer serves the people, but rather feeds on the people. 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 And its actions by the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Remember a few years ago when Prime Minister, I think her name is Jacinda Ardern, announced sweeping changes to New Zealand's gun laws following that one guy's rampage of a Christian/Muslim mosque? Remember this?
We will also ban all assault rifles. We will ban all high-capacity magazines. We will ban all parts with the ability to convert semi-automatic or any other type of firearm into a military-style semi-automatic weapon. We will ban parts that cause a firearm to generate semi-automatic, automatic, or close to automatic gunfire. In short, every semi-automatic weapon used in the terrorist attack on Friday will be banned in this country. Details of the weapons handed back by owners that are covered by the ban will also be taken to ensure
that fair and reasonable compensation is paid once the buyback is in place.
But I think what's important now is that New Zealand public...
Now think about that, folks. Think about that. Look what happened back in New Zealand there, and New Zealand and Australia are very close in proximity, and their politics are very the same. But first off, I'd like to know, this is what happens when you elect, 125-pound, dainty whatevers. All right, this is what happens. But that aside, is there a relation between what she did back then by banning all sorts of home defense weapons to what's going on now in Australia with their militarized, pro-vaccine, COVID hysterical crackdown on their citizens?
And it's to Australia now, where an anti-lockdown protest in Melbourne has turned violent. Police arrested demonstrators and used pepper spray as hundreds of people took to the streets. Protesters say the lockdown is authoritarian and a way to deflect criticism of a vaccination program that has fallen far behind those of other countries.
Anger boils over in Melbourne.
These protesters want their freedoms back. The city is in its 6th lockdown. Now the restrictions have been extended to the entire state.
And again, folks, is there a connection between what's occurring in Australia today and what occurred in New Zealand just a few short years ago?
Today I'm announcing that New Zealand will ban all military-style semi-automatic weapons. We will also ban all assault rifles.
We will ban
all high-capacity magazines.
We will ban
all parts with the ability to convert semi-automatic or any other type of firearm into a military-style semi-automatic weapon.
I mean, folks, can you see how this plays right into the fear, possibly even valid fears, of Second Amendment believers in the United States of America? This is actually exactly what they fear. This is what they train for. This is why they cherish the Second Amendment. Now, is it any coincidence that a few years earlier, the Prime Minister of New Zealand confiscated all these guns and cracked down on weapons and self-defense styled guns and ammo? And then a few years later, we see what's going on in the news today. Not only that, but check this out. Even more intrusion is on the way, as Australia is experimenting with an app that you have to put on your phone, a location app. And when they contact you to find out where you're at, it's basically a quarantine app. And if you don't respond within 15 minutes, here come the stormtroopers.
We've been chronicling what's happening over in Australia between their draconian lockdown measures, the insane way they're treating their protesters, and now when you watch this article from The Atlantic saying Australia traded away too much of its liberty, you're looking at this crazy portion of this article that says people in South Australia will be forced to download an app that combines facial recognition and geolocation. The state will then text them at random times, and thereafter they will have 15 minutes to take a picture of their face in the location where they're supposed to be, and should they fail, the local police department will be sent to follow up in person. It's full stop. If you ever saw something that was going to be misused later on, you're looking at it right now. A facial recognition and geolocation app you're forced to have and forced to reply to within 15 minutes, or you could be arrested. Australia has completely lost the plot, because in the beginning when I saw what was happening...
And that was by Decoy Voice, all right? And he makes a lot of sense, folks. You see what's happening? Come on, man. Facial recognition, and if you don't reply within 15 minutes, here come the stormtroopers, folks. I mean, are we in the middle of a movie here or something? So anyways, back to the Second Amendment types. That's what this segment began on, and I want to end it on that. So you can see why many Second Amendment admirers living in America right now, you can see them watching what's going on around the world, but not just around the world, but domestically. So when they see armed insurgents like the Taliban, who have plenty of armament, rise up and drive out and away tyrannical governments, even though they themselves are tyrannical, but that's not the point. It's the optics. It's the optics that Second Amendment types drool over and realize that without guns, without ammunition, without the ability to arm oneself, you have no defense. And for years, we were all taught and trained this could never happen in the West. Well, look at Australia, that article I just read. Look it up yourself. Facial recognition quarantine rules that the state can randomly tweet you and say, where's your location? And if you don't respond within 15 minutes, if you're not where you're assigned to be, here comes the stormtroopers, folks. This is like that one movie. It doesn't get more realistic and futuristic than now, or 1984 George Orwell than now, folks. That's all I'm saying. I'm not advocating anything, but I am saying, in the end, it may just be those who believe in the Second Amendment that have to end up standing up even for liberals that has been trained to frown upon Second Amendment types. It may be one day that the Second Amendment types are the very ones that stand up for even their freedoms. So with that being said, folks, thanks for tuning in to The Cage Show. And again, The Cage Show is simply here to make you think. That's all. I'm not advocating anything. The Cage Show is simply here to make you think and to help us all to focus in on the finer issues of the day, unlike mainstream talk radio where they talk for 1 minute and then bombard you with like 30 minutes of commercials. So with that, I am out. Be brave and step into the cage. I invite anyone out there to be a guest, regardless of your viewpoints. Later and out. Be safe and treat those around you kindly, and that kindness will come back to you.